Hey YouTube, this is Nordic Brit. There's been a lot of news lately about privacy and security concerns and so on, especially surrounding data, private data, things on Facebook, WhatsApp, and all those kind of services. A few companies have been firing shots at each other about security and privacy and which companies you should trust and so on. But as a prepper, as someone who believes in privacy, there isn't actually many options for you in terms of what to pick and what to use. Really, the only realistic option that exists right now is Signal, because the security is open source, it's trusted by people who have a lot to lose. Whistleblowers and so on use things like Signal because the actual system itself is open source and accessible to anyone to look at and scrutinize the source code. That's really important. Other services like Telegram and so on, which have closed source, is a huge risk factor when it comes to privacy and security. So you never ever should trust. As someone who works in IT myself, and networks and security, and also a prepper, you combine all these things together and you really rule out a lot of services. But there are a few key things to keep in mind. Firstly, you need to make sure that whichever service you use has open source code for the server and for the app. If it has neither of those things or only one, then you need to put that to a side. That's not going to be any good for you. You must switch to something that has both open source on the server and the app. Secondly, end-to-end encryption. This is super important. So you want the encryption to be on the device. You want end-to-end message encryption. That's super important if you want to hide details about the messages and to reduce the risk of any leaks coming out of those messages. They basically need to have the device in your hand. So, and of course you can lock it with biometrics and things like passcodes and so on. So it's very secure. In actual fact, it's a lot more risky stuff on the internet than it is actual physical security. So but keep that in mind. End-to-end encryption is another thing that you must consider. And the third option is data. Companies should only really be collecting data they need to actually allow the service to function. Now, some services like Facebook and so on, those companies make their money by selling data and using targeted ads. They use our data. Now, if that's an issue for you, which it should be for some reasons, but not always for the reasons that people think, then of course those services themselves must collect that data from you before they can actually make any money. That's how this works. It's the whole typical, if you're not paying for the product, then you are the product type of scenario. But that doesn't always fit because things like Signal are donations, so you're not paying for it. And therefore you're not the product, if that makes sense. So it's not always the rule, but it's a pretty standard rule for most companies. Microsoft took a shot over the last few days with Skype and the privacy around Skype. The only problem with Skype is the service is shit, but the privacy around it is they don't sell your data to third parties. However, the code is closed, so can you really trust it? Plus all the NSA backdoors to Windows, and therefore anything that probably sits on it is a really big risk. So this is just a message to everyone subscribed to this channel, to anyone who watches this video. There are very few services out there that tick those boxes, and if you're really keen on privacy and security, there is only really one major option you have right now, and that is Signal. It's got most features that most people would want. There's only a couple of real downsides to it, such as continuation of messages, for example, across devices, but it's a minor inconvenience to the pros of the security. And given the kind of various crackdowns, regulations that are definitely going to come for cryptocurrency and so on, things like Signal are going to be absolutely key in ensuring that you can prep accordingly and that you don't allow the government to have too much step in your life. So just take this as some advice. I hope everyone is doing good. Please stay safe during the pandemic, and please stay safe online. Use Signal or something that meets the criteria like Signal. Nordic Brit out.